कैसे हो भाई बहनों मैं हूं अनस इस दफा हम लोग Activision Blizzard के बारे में फिर से और मजाक बना रहे हैं. Ladies and gentlemen, I am excited to talk about today. Now, let's get started with the real meat and potatoes, okay? Activision Blizzard, big, hot, juicy company, okay? They're going through a big, hot, juicy mess right now. Frankly, one where even CEO Bobby Kotick is frankly getting a bit of a goatsy by everyone in the business around him. Nintendo, Sony, Xbox, they all call Activision Blizzard's crisis disturbing. Now, to understand when everybody in the industry gangs up on Bobby Kotick, I think all of us have a little bit of a happiness. Okay, Bobby Kotick is not the best example to have in the video game sphere, okay? Bobby Kotick is basically the kind of CEO that you shouldn't be having in the video game sphere. Sure, he might make a lot of money, but he's not exactly, I would call, the greatest thing for video gaming. But that being said, though, I don't want to show Bobby Kotick too much, alright? Frankly, this isn't the case. If you want to watch a video about the Activision Blizzard lawsuits right now that are going on, there are different channels and far better channels than mine. What I'm interested about is the technical side. So today's video is all about, just me giving you a bit of, virus investigations, really showing you how a DDoS attack really works. And why? That's because yesterday, Activision Blizzard actually had a DDoS attack on Battle.net. So basically, if you wanted to play some Vanguard, a little bit of an issue. You wanted to play some World of Warcraft, bit of an issue, okay? People's gaming times got chewed up. Now, I got a bunch of takes that I read on the internet. For instance, when Activision Blizzard said, "We are currently experiencing a DDoS attack, which may result in high latency and disconnections for some players." Now, of course, underneath Twitter, there's always got to be some experts giving a take that really makes no sense. So, for instance, one, the $1 million company could afford shushing harassments and threats by their own CEO in the company, but couldn't afford having DDoS mitigation on their servers. Now, I wanted to start this off, or I don't know why I went with the accent there. Frankly, I figured I needed something that sounded like somebody had their nose up their asshole, so this is basically where I went to. So, when you read something like that, you really got to understand, okay, look, I hate Activision Blizzard too much, but we really got to talk about what a DDoS attack is. Because if you put something up on the internet for people to access, it's gonna get DDoS attacked, okay? Simple as that. So today's video is all about a long, sort of computer explanation from that weird uncle that snorts way too much G Fuel. Code SOG, by the way. So let's get started, okay? Now, somebody asked, could somebody explain what a DDoS attack is? Well, let's get started. So to understand, a DDoS attack is basically, according to this one diagram that we just saw on Twitter, is a very good one, okay? So you've got the victim over here. Pretend this is Activision servers, right? One of their servers connected to the internet. This is the guy who wants to take it out, okay? This is the real chief attacker. He goes to a controller system, one that operates a botnet that connects to tons of computers, right? These computers all gangbang the victim computer, and basically by sending a lot of, service requests, a lot of, activity towards that server, they effectively shut that server down, okay? They overload it. So to really understand, we have to really show how this works, okay? From like a lot, we have to really ramp up the DDoS attacks, okay? So today's video, before we start off, is purely educational, okay? I don't endorse anybody DDoS attacking anybody. This is really to educate people who want to learn what a DDoS attack is and potentially understand how it operates and possibly how to even avoid it in the future. We might even already be there, but let's get started, okay? So for one, we need two pieces of tool, okay? We need VirtualBox because we're building virtual machines. In fact, I'm going to show you a bit of the virtual machine setup action going on right now. So here I got some virtual machines. Okay, Windows 11, which is going to be our victim computer, which is what we're going to be attacking in our simulated DDoS. We're going to simulate some DDoS attacks. Kali Linux is the tool we're using to run the attack, okay? So Kali Linux, back in the day used to be called Backtrack, is basically a penetrations testing distribution Linux environment that you can download and run for yourself, okay? You can download this to learn some ethical hacking yourself too. So to get this, you go to Kali Linux's website. All right, it's very simple to do. In fact, it's very well maintained. If you have whatever architecture, Kali Linux will run just fine. You go over here, you hit the download, and they basically got you set for everything. ARM, you got it. Cell phones, you got it. Cloud, you got it. Bare metal, you have it. But anyways, now that we have this all done, all right, let's get started. So this is Kali Linux once you boot into it, okay? This is Kali Linux, and to the right here, we've got good old-fashioned Windows. Now, in order to achieve such actions, we're going to open up VirtualBox, hit the preferences, and basically in our hypervisor, we're going to go to our network and make sure that we have a network that we created. So this NAT network is basically like a router, okay? Because it's going to connect my virtual machines together so I can show you how to simulate these attacks. Now, to show you how we're connected, okay, on the Windows side, we're going to be opening up a terminal, okay? So a command prompt, and we're going to type in ipconfig. ipconfig is going to show me 10.0.2.15. This is the IP address that's running on the local sort of router that I made, the NAT configuration. But this IP address is the local IP address for Windows, right? Before anybody said, but Moda, can you get hacked with this? It's a local IP address. Nothing's going to happen, okay? I didn't leak anything. It is what it is. So on Linux's side, we're going to open up the system and we're going to type in /sbin/ifconfig. Okay, I've already kind of done it, as you can tell. And inside here, you can see that my IP is 10.0.2.4. Okay, this is the IP that Linux is using, Kali Linux. So let's talk to Linux from Windows. We're going to type in ping, all right, 10.0.2.4. And as you can see over here, we're getting a bunch of replies from Linux. So if it says 0% loss, that means that I just sent network packets to this Kali Linux. We're going to talk back again, okay? So we're going to type in ping 10.0.2.15. And if all else works, you're going to be seeing these ping requests. So everything seems to be working just fine. These systems are able to communicate between one another. So to understand, if I was to DDoS, the most layman's explanation, I would just ping them over and over and over again. So what I'm doing right now is I'm sending a bunch of packets over to Windows constantly, okay? Now again, multiply this by hundreds, if not thousands of users, and you can see how it would cause a bit of an issue to this Windows system right here. Now, there's plenty of firewall technology that was developed way back in the Paleolithic era that counters what we're effectively seeing over here. So what we're kind of doing right now is, this is like a mouse, a drunken mouse going up against Muhammad Ali, okay? It's just not gonna do anything. So we're just gonna stop this right here before it gets even more embarrassing. Now, here's where we're going to get into something a little serious. This is where we're going to use a lot of tools to help us actually attack this system. So this is where I've installed something called Wireshark to really give us an idea of network traffic, okay? So I'm going to open up the Ethernet port over here, and this is a traffic list of basically everything that's going on Windows. Right now, we're going to launch an attack against Windows through Kali Linux. So inside Linux over here, inside a terminal shell, we're going to be typing in MSF console, okay? MSF console is a Metasploit framework console that we're going to be using to find an exploit that'll run a SYN flood against here, okay? So SYN flood is going to be where we're going to be sending tons of packets. We're going to be flooding this more than it's already been flooded right now. So to understand, we're going to do search SYN flood, all right, like this. And we're going to start flooding this. So as you can see, it's got some modules, right? Auxiliary, DOS, TCP, SYN flood. Here we're going to do use 0, so we pick that, and now we're in SYN flood, okay? So clear that out real quick, and we're going to type in show options, all right? So here's a bunch of requirements that you're going to be needing. Our host is what we're going to be using. We're going to enter the IP address for Windows, and then our port is where we're going to be picking a port, and then we're going to be setting the amount of packets, and we're going to be launching this entire endeavor. So going back to Windows, we know that our IP is 10.0.2.15. We know that the attacking IP, we know that the IP we want to hit is this one. So inside over here, we go, set our hosts, all right, to 10.0.2.15. And it's already set. Now we want to set a port in this case. So we're going to do set our port, all right, and we're going to do like 150, okay? There we go. We're picking port 150. It has to be an open port that can be basically exploited here in this situation. Now we can choose the amount of packets we want to send, or we can just type in the words exploit and call it a day. Now, something to note over here is we're about to see a lot of exploitation happen in this entire Wireshark. So as soon as I hit enter, you're going to start seeing, whoa! We're getting SYN flooded right now, buckos. This thing is getting absolutely decimated with ports over and over and over again. So there's a lot of network traffic that's happening right now. So we're going to open up one more terminal on Linux over here and sort of get an idea of what we're doing. So we're going to open up BPY top, which is sort of a task manager, and you're going to start seeing that, man, the CPU is acting a little bit wilder. There's actually CPU activity. It's actually using something, 12.5% of the CPU, no less. And we are uploading a fair amount of packets. Now you might be like, oh wow, it's that easy? The reality of it is that most servers on the internet are probably going to have firewalls that'll actually mitigate this within seconds. So to understand what SYN flooding is doing is we're sending a bunch of packets over to the system. But now any firewall within seconds is probably going to realize, all these packets are the same. We're getting flooded, guys. And then it immediately start rejecting these packets to begin with, okay? If I opened up a firewall here real quick on Windows, for instance, like if I went to Windows Firewall, and I basically just enabled enabled this, like I went use recommended settings, it's actually now mitigating the entire thing. It's not actually having any issues. It's basically stopping this entire thing from flooding my system. So it's actually stopped everything. In fact, if I quit it now and I start re-exploiting, you'll actually see that the system is doing a pretty good job of preventing me from getting DDoS. It's actually isolating it and preventing all of that nonsense anyways. In fact, once a firewall is actually equipped, you can actually ping the system as well by going 0.10.0.2.15. And it actually will even reject the pings. That's just a firewall kicking in and saying, hey, stop flooding me, get out of here. Again, just for the sake of demonstrations, we're going to turn this off. The reason I'm showing you these earlier exploits is that I really don't want to teach you guys how to actually assault any server with real DDoS stuff. I'm only doing this for educational reasons. Of course, as soon as I turned the firewall off, the ping started going through. That's wild, right? That's real-time shit. Now, where things get even more sinister and things get even wilder is when we go to like these scripts, okay? These DDoS scripts that exist, okay? This is sort of the third stage. Now, these scripts have existed for a long time. We're talking they've existed for like 3 to 4 years. So these are older scripts. And again, the only reason I'm showing you this is to get some idea, it's to educate yourself on how this happens and why it's such a problem, okay? So these scripts are probably sold on the internet like a black hat forum for like $100, $200. People are getting scammed, and you can find these scripts on like GitHub or just any like InfoSec website out on the internet. They're old scripts and they won't work as you would expect, but they're a good idea to show you how hacking evolves, especially in DDoS or, well, really anything. So this is lulsec.py. Just as a quick example, opening it up in any text editor will show you this is the real cream, okay? So user agent list. So inside here, you can see how they've got like tons upon tons of user agents. If you go all the way down, they're at like line 3000 or something. So let's go over what they're doing, okay? Now, typically in a normal system, you do a HTTP GET request. This is what they're trying to abuse now. So how an HTTP GET request works is, let's say you go to www.youtube.com. You send a GET request, YouTube then talks back to your system. It's like, oh, here's the website. Go do what you need, king. Now, this is a totally legitimate request. But it's one thing you have to understand with a hacker or anybody who's using computers maliciously is they will always try to find a way to take something legitimate and abuse it, okay? And this is where they're abusing the GET request. So here in the user agent list, you can see how they've got multiple different devices that they've crafted, right? So for instance, you've noticed how one of the user agents, and a user agent is basically like the web browser or the system that you're using, a profile of it, right? So here they've got a profile of Mozilla Firefox Windows, okay? Windows NT 5.1, okay? And then if you go all the way down, you'll see, for instance, they've got Mozilla again, so Firefox, X11. So basically, instead of Windows, they've made a Linux profile, right? And then you can go down and down and down and down and down, and here they've got Mozilla, again, Firefox, iPad, okay? They've even mentioned the CPU type and all of that. And again, you can keep on going down this entire system and realize that, hey, the Mozilla shows up again, PlayStation 3, iTunes, everything. They've got a user agent up the wazoo. So once they've got all these user agents, you can see that they use the user agent and they use a bunch of like headers and appendages. So like www.facebook.com or like win.ifa.it. So the more and more you go down, you'll notice that the real meat is when they use all of this and they craft it together to make multiple HTTP GET packets, these request packets. They then send these packets and flood entire servers. So here's the thing. When we looked at SYN flooding and we looked at pinging, these are similar packets that any firewall would look at and say, they're just repeated packets, filter them out. But when it comes to these situations, they're basically sending a server so many requests, so many packets from different types that a firewall isn't able to easily discern, wow, these are actual individual users. Maybe these are like millions of people trying to connect, and then it starts getting overloaded and the server starts to get attacked and actually go down. That's what you're looking at, okay? So I'm going to launch one of these things to show you just how it works. We have to go http://. So it's about as simple as typing this one line right here, so your IP address and everything. As soon as you hit enter, this thing starts engaging attacks. And there's not a whole lot of attacks going on because understandably, these are really old scripts. Even without a firewall, most network technology, most things on Windows aside will realize, all right, let's get rid of it. Again, these would probably affect like older systems, but generally any system with a firewall will be able to mitigate this relatively well, okay? Now here you can even see that I'm using like 12% of the actual CPU. It's launching an attack. It's sending a bunch of packets over. So this is an idea of how these kind of things play out, okay? This is how this stuff tends to play out. And that's really an idea of what you can expect. This is how easy it can be to launch DDoS attacks. But of course, technology is getting better. And the more and more, hackers build these kind of things, the more and better there are actually cybersecurity engineers that find a way to properly mitigate these kind of attacks. It's like an ever-evolving game, okay? It's just one party goes here, the other party beats them, and it's just an ever-evolving ladder of cyber warfare, okay? That's generally the idea you expect. But this is how DDoS stuff works. Again, if you're connected to the internet, you're probably going to be exposing yourself to a bunch of this nonsense anyways. Now, it's not the end of the world in a lot of cases, ladies and gentlemen. Because we're headed to a cloud world, there are now much more stronger DDoS mitigations and protections that exist. And of course, companies looking to actually, further get the minimum bottom line, if you will, to make the most money, may choose to opt out of the most stringent DDoS protection systems out there, even if those companies are making billions of dollars a year. That said, though, the best mitigations can always be subject to an attack by any hacker party out there. So it's really not the fault of multi-billion-dollar companies if their websites get taken down. When the attack is severe and complicated and, malicious enough, it can take down anybody unsuspecting, okay? This is why, as a cybersecurity engineer, you need to learn how these things take place. Because once you understand how a DDoS attack plays out, you're better able to mitigate it for any client that you work for, right? That's generally the idea you've gone with. Now, what you saw in an example here was one computer, one system launching a DDoS attack against another system, okay? In a realistic scenario, this is actually a botnet, okay? So to understand what actually happens is, let's say, somebody who's just browsing the internet, they download a few files off the internet, they don't virus scan them properly. They might get their computer infected. Let's say that you downloaded some weird shady software. Now, your computer may or may not be subject to somebody else. You might be part of a botnet. So to understand, let's say that you are part of a botnet. You're with 1,000 to 2,000 to hundreds of other people, okay? You're connected in a botnet to some master system. So that master system sends out the exact same script to all those slave computers at the same time, and all of a sudden, you and a bunch of other people are now sending packets in uniform to one server. See, one computer isn't bad enough, all right? That can be mitigated. Now imagine if this process was to happen across thousands of computers. This is what botnets do, okay? This is how DDoSs can be successful. If you have the scale, if you have the sophistication, you can take down almost any server out there. And this is the problem that IT people have to face every single day. Now, that being said, for Blizzard and basically any company to mitigate this, it takes a matter of time and understanding what's happening onto their network stack. They have to look through those logs and understand how they're being attacked and find a way to mitigate around it. That's pretty much generally what's going on. So it's not a matter of, haha, big billion-dollar company got taken down. No, it's a matter of you got caught with your pants down, better find a way to mitigate it. And it is what it is. But again, the world's getting better, and that's pretty much how it goes down with. As far as botnets go, if you want to know how to build a botnet, actually, if you want to see how botnets work in action, I will gladly educate the masses on that one. But yeah, I wanted to make this video because I found the idea of DDoSing to be rather interesting. People often on the internet question, how can this happen? Well, you saw it in examples right here. Examples that frankly should not and won't work anymore. But it's a good idea to educate the audience and to teach you how DDoSing works. So anytime somebody, talks about this on the internet, you now can walk with a bevy of information in your pocket. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I know you may not see it, but I will see it, and it helps me make better content. I am out.